welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal brother that I recently had the opportunity to connect with. We both have a mutual friend who thought it would be an excellent idea for us to link up, and I couldn't have agreed with him more. This man is an author, he is a speaker, he is a historian, a mentor, a father, but most importantly, he is a man of God, and he's taking some time out of his very busy schedule to hang out with us for a little while to share a bit of his journey, a bit of his story with the hopes of encouraging and inspiring and uplifting us, especially when it comes to dealing with challenges and adversities of life. He wants to be an inspiration to us as only he knows how to be. And I tell you, he has a powerful story. You will not be disappointed. I'm excited to have him aboard and interested in learning more about his mission and his purpose in life because he surely is walking in it. So without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased and honored to introduce to you our guest this evening, Dr. Anthony Dixon. Dr. Dixon, thank you so much for being on the show.
Good evening, brother. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having
Absolutely. 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 So before we jump into our segments for this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of give our audience a taste of who is Dr. Anthony Dixon.
Okay. Well, my name, of course, is Dr. Anthony Dixon. I'm originally from Georgia, from Fort Valley, Georgia, but I've lived in Florida for most of my life now. Um, I went to Florida A&M University, where I majored in history, and I continued on um, from Florida A&M University to Indiana University to get my PhD in history. I concentrate on the African diaspora as well as special collections and archives and who takes care of our history and material culture as well as who does the work in the community. And so in that, I became a public historian where I left the classroom and I work out in the field full time now. I work with libraries, I work with museums, I work with HBCUs, I work with community centers in historic preservation, also in collection development, making sure that our story and our material culture is held and told the right way. But I also work with community centers and helping them address their needs, primarily by writing grants. So I'm also a grant writer um, by work of this nature of this work and working with these different nonprofit organizations for years now. I ended up becoming a grant writer as well. So we do basically, I do rather, whatever it takes to uplift the community, to get programs together, to get our historic preservation, our stories told, and the things that are going to move us forward.
Love that. Love that. That's just phenomenal work that you're doing right here. Again, tapping into the history. And I actually want to build upon that because again I've had a chance to learn a little bit about your work as a historian, and I want you to kind of share that a little bit more with the audience. I want to first ask you, what was it about history in general that drew your interest into it, that made you jump all in and say, you know what, I want to really experience this, not just as just a major to just take in school, but really engulf myself into it. Because what people need to understand is that you're not just somebody that just likes to just randomly read, history books or what have you. You have delved deep into that subject matter, and it's been shown through the various works that you're doing, even to the point of you. I know you mentioned about African history. You're not just talking about African American history. You get into African history. You have work that's geared towards Black Seminoles. You're like getting the whole gambit of how we're connected, and from every facet. So I'm kind of interested and curious to know if you would share with us, what drew you into this space, and what has that experience been like for you as you delved further and further into it.
Well, history has always been my favorite subject throughout even grade school. And when I got to college, I did as most young people, right? I
Mhm.
went for the majors that I thought was going to be the most lucrative, make the most money.
Mhm.
Business, electronic engineering, tech. I went after all the quote unquote money degrees. And so it just didn't work, and it wasn't for me. And so I had a quick come to Jesus moment with my mother, so to speak. Um, because like I said, I was jumping from major to major, wasn't doing well in this major, whatnot. And she was like, history has always been your favorite subject. And so I basically took an intro to African American history course, and I never looked back from there. I knew that was, I didn't know what type of future it was, but I knew that was where I was supposed to be.
Hmm.
And so I continued from there on in history, and then specifically starting with African American studies as my minor and concentrating on African American history and going from there. Now, the thing about it is, it's important because you understand the three things, and I'll say them quickly with African diaspora studies, right? The first thing is to provide a voice to the voiceless. All of these stories, all of these people who have made major contributions, not just here in America, but around the world, and giving them their voice and their just due. Then the second thing is to make those cultural connections among Black people in the world, because we do. Our culture has been transplanted in different places, whether it was forced migration or migration on our own. And then the third thing is, how do we take that information and use it to deal with issues that we're facing today? Because there's no need to learn that historical information if we're not going to use it and apply it to issues we're facing today. And that's how I became a public historian.
Wow, wow. That is fascinating. And I like the fact that you pointed out that it wasn't just enough for you to just say, where we fit in history wise, within the states. You're saying we need to know where we fit in just worldwide, our
Yeah.
contributions, and of course, as I'm sure it's no secret to you is that we have a vast history of influence and everything that's about our world today, whether it's on the invention side, whether it's educationally speaking, whether it's culturally speaking. I mean, all facets. There's not a facet that you can really speak of that we don't have a place in that in the origin, in the origins of it all. So I love that you've delved into this the way that you have and doing the works that you're doing. I mean, that's just absolutely phenomenal. But one of the things that you just mentioned that came to mind, you talked about being able to not only learn this history and understanding the context of it, but being able to take that knowledge and applying it today. And I can't disagree with you on that. I support that 100%. But one of the things I am curious about when you think about the world today, somebody like you, historian, having an appreciation for where we come from and our contributions to this world, but yet we live in a society today here in America where the very things that you're studying, the very things that you're trying to impart knowledge on, unfortunately we're in days and times where they're trying to get rid of that, from our educational systems. They're trying to ban those books or related programs or things like that. So how has that played a role, knowing that this has been, more so lately than in the past, that's been a big push to not have these things out there while you're progressively trying to get it out there. What has that challenge been like for you in terms of navigating that, and what do you see as our way of being able to stay on top of it as we live in a country, unfortunately, that's trying to suppress us in that regard?
Well, that's the thing. There's always a silver lining to something, right?
Hmm.
And so, as there's been this push, particularly as you know, in my state here in Florida,
Hmm.
by DeSantis, to either whitewash or basically take out African American or blacks in general, because we have a large Afro Caribbean community here in Florida, but to take out their contributions and their experience. And
Hmm.
so, what it has done, though, it has caused more black people to want to know. So we are ending up doing things on two fronts there. We're working to get this information back into the schools, but also it has caused us to look internally. And so we begin to work with community organizations. We work with churches. We work with different community centers in terms of getting this information within the community as well. So, for a quick example, we always have and always done programs at our community centers that do tutoring after school. Well, now we're trying to get community centers to now take 2 days out of the week, 30 minutes per day, and now teach African American history and culture and Black history and culture. You see, we need to do it on both fronts, not just get it back in the schools for all children so that we can live in a more uh, diverse society, but also internally because our children need to understand our contributions so that we can get them to understand that we are positive people who have done and made impact, and that gives them the encouragement and the self-esteem to move forward and do positive things for themselves and for the community.
Yeah, I love that approach because what you're in essence saying to us is that I'm sorry, it looks like we're having a little bit of feedback. Let me adjust that real quick. I don't know if that's on my end or on your end. I think we're good. Okay, there we go. I appreciate you saying that because if I'm hearing you correctly, yeah, you're acknowledging the fact that this information needs to be in our schools, and as we just discussed, there's pushback to that, to not have it in the schools, either to eliminate it altogether or to water it down to where it's minimized, where the impact of it all is minimized. But I like that you're saying, you know what, we can't rely just exclusively on what the schools are doing. We have to take advantage of community organizations. We have to take advantage of our churches. We have to explore all those options in order to be able to fully access, so that if they block us here, then go over here. That if they block us here, go over here. Don't let ourselves be limited in getting that information that we need. That we need to fully take on that information in whatever way we need to get it, and don't just limit ourselves or just be dependent upon just one source from getting access to that information.
Yes, exactly.
Great, great stuff, great stuff. And again, to my listening audience, I apologize. Looks like we're having a little feedback here. Let me work on that real quick. Okay, it looks like I think it might be on your end. I just muted your mic momentarily, Dr. Dixon. Looks like we were just getting a little bit of feedback. I just want to make sure we were good to go. Um, yes, it sounds. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but it's a little staticky on your end with the mic.
Yeah, I hear a little static there. I don't know.
I don't know if it's because you're
Should I
just
get?
going off of your phone, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And
All right.
put that away.
Um, so we're just making a little minor adjustment. So again, my listening audience, you're listening to the Blessing the Streets podcast. We're just working through a little minor technical difficulty. Okay, yeah, it appears. I think it's on your end with your mic is what I'm hearing the feedback. So I don't know if you can make a little minor adjustment on your end or not, but again, we'll get that kink worked out so we can continue on because this is really a powerful discussion, and I'm excited about everything that you're sharing so far. I mean, this is really good stuff, and we definitely need to hear it. We need to embrace our history, and we have to have a game plan to challenge those who are trying to oppress that from us. And as you stated, certain states are more aggressive with it than others. But like I said, you're in Florida, I'm here in Texas, similar scenarios, but nevertheless, something that we have to definitely be on top of in our respective organizations, churches, and even in the homes as parents, being proactive in making sure that our children are getting exposed to this information, learning about themselves, because that's what helps to empower them. It gives them value and appreciation for who they are and where they come from. That they're not just a statistic. They're not just something or someone to just be overlooked and mishandled, but that they bring value to the table. They are born, into a richness, if you will, of culture and in their roots and all of that. And they need to know that as early as possible, because it does make a difference in how they conduct themselves and how they, again, how they value themselves moving forward. So I definitely appreciate you bringing that up. So, Dr. Dixon, one of the things that I like to take a time out to focus in on, as we share our journey, as we share our stories, I really think it's important, kind of similar to the work that you do, but this is more in a different angle. When we talk about the journey that we go on in life, our purpose for life, I always believe that it's important to take the time out to reflect back on the beginnings, where we actually literally look back as far back as childhood and just kind of take a moment to reflect on that, to see, was there, why did certain experiences happen to us in life? Why were there certain connections with this person or that person in life? And as a child, a lot of it doesn't always make sense because we're kids. We don't know. We don't understand it all, the full context. But as we move further in life, and you've already kind of made a connection with that when you talked about you've always kind of had a love for history. You had no idea that your love for history would navigate itself to doing the great works that you're doing today, but that type of exposure, that kind of connection to that subject matter had to happen in order for you to be able to do the works that you're doing today. So taking those moments to reflect is really critical. So with that said, if you would share with us, what was it like for you growing up? Fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there was any particular challenges that come to mind that you'd like to share, you can do that as well. Kind of give us the foundational basis of where your story begins.
Okay. Well, again, I was born and raised in Georgia in a small rural city called Fort Valley, that does have an HBCU there. And so the HBCU was the center of life pretty much in this city. And I lived outside of the city, actually, even in a more rural area. And I must admit, I kind of resented living in the rural area. I really didn't like living in the country. I grew up as a country boy. It wasn't until I got older that I understood the importance of that, and all of the hard work that my father instilled in me. It kind of took over at a certain age, and I thank God that He did instill that work ethic in me, because I did things that most kids didn't. I tell people all the time, my first job was getting eggs out of the chicken coop. You know, uh, and so that was my first major daily chore, getting the eggs out of the chicken coop. I didn't even count the garbage. I mean, that was just norm. The real chore was the eggs, and then it was the fixing a fire, fixing the fireplace for my mother after work. When she came home, we came home from school, from work. I cleaned out the fireplace and created her a fire. And then if she wanted me to light it, then I would light it if it was cold enough. If not, we may wait till later on the evening, once the sun went down and it got colder, then we would light it. But those were the things that were my first chores. Um, and so that life taught me a solid work ethic. Now, like you said earlier, as children, we don't understand the value in all of that. Picking up pecans for family members and all of that good stuff. Um, but I didn't get that when I was young, and so I was immature, and I was just ready to get away. I just wanted out of the country, and so that immaturity I took with me when I left to go to Florida A&M.
Okay, okay. Again, first off, appreciate your transparency and sharing a little bit about your upbringing. Um, I think it's phenomenal when people, share. Again, I'm a city boy, but just having an appreciation for, like you said, growing up in a rural area. learning, how to just, like I said, do jobs that, might not have seemed to be, of great value, like you said, but at the same time, the underlying value that was there is, again, it gave you the sense of work ethic. It gave you the sense of what it meant to, to put your best foot, put your best foot forward in whatever it is that you're doing. So again, seems like a minor thing. The setting seems like a minor thing, and even you had your resistance to it, your resentment of it. When I think fast forward to what you're doing today, little pieces, little elements of all of that definitely mattered, and how it developed you. Again, built up your character, your integrity, your approach. Because I can't imagine for somebody who does the work that you do at the level that you do it, you definitely have to be disciplined. You definitely have to be focused. You definitely have to be all in to do something like this. This is not, again, I don't even know if my audience fully captures, and then that's going to be something that they need to tap into and learning more about you, not only on the podcast but after the podcast. Doing some Google you research this brother. You're going to find out he's very intense in the work that he's doing. This is something that he's clearly taking very serious approach towards. And so yeah, I don't minimize those beginning moments, which is why I like to take a moment to talk about those things, because I think that those little elements here and there, they begin to add up. We begin to be able to connect the dots to see how it all transitions in you into becoming the man that you have become, and doing the work that you're doing, walking in your purpose. So again, I appreciate you sharing that. So, Dr. Dixon, as I'm sure you go through childhood. You have some good, you have some bad experiences here and there, ups and downs. It's part of life, and of course, as we approach adulthood, that doesn't change. The experiences still come, the storms still come, the challenges, the adversity, it still comes. But every now and then we find ourselves facing a moment of challenge, a moment of storms, if you will, that hits a little bit different than the normal day to day stuff, in such a way that when we find ourselves in these moments in time, we actually, might have a sense of hopelessness, a sense of helplessness, where we feel like the challenge that I'm up against, the adversity that I'm up against, is something that I don't see a way out. This is not something that I can buy my way out of. This is not something that I can make a phone call and get my way out of. It's me in this moment of adversity. It's weighing on me, and I don't know what to do about it. Um, you know, Thankful to God you're here today. So whatever the story is that you have for us, to share in this moment, clearly God made a way for you to get through it. But obviously, maybe back then you might have had your doubts. You might have had some questions and some concerns, like, how am I going to overcome that? So with that said, if you would share with us a time where you experienced a moment like I've described. You didn't see a way. You didn't know how you were going to overcome it. You're here today to talk about it. But if you will, just kind of walk us through what that experience was like for you, and what was ultimately the turning point where you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel, and coming out of that moment of adversity.
Okay. Well, my story is different. Um, when I got to college, I went through undergrad, late '80s, early '90s, and I lost my way, plain and simple. My immaturity, I was living this double life. I was going to class, I was doing these things. First, I was goofing off, like I said, jumping from major to major. And then I got some clarity with history and going into history. But at the same time, I was trapped, like most young people today, with this living day to day, only seeing what's right in front of you. And so I got caught with this lure of fast money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began to do things that definitely your normal college student wouldn't do. And I began to delve into the quote unquote street life and thug life. Even though I go to class at night, I would be living a totally different life. And as you know, a divided house cannot stand. And
Mm-hmm.
so it caught up with me, you know. Um, just prior to my graduating from college, I got into something like you said that I couldn't just get myself out of. My mother couldn't get me out of it. My father couldn't get me out of it. Um, and so I ended up doing 5 years at Florida A&M and getting a Bachelor of Science, but I also turned around and did 5.5 years in the Florida Department of Corrections. And so I actually watched my college graduation from the county jail. And I went from there right on to the Florida Department of Corrections. And so in that time, like you said, I was in this spot where I knew God had given me a decent life. I didn't grow up poor. I didn't grow up hungry, worried about things. My parents had given me a good life. Um, my father was a professor at Fort Valley State at HBCU. My mother was a teacher. Then she became a principal. So I was given these blessings that I squandered, and so there was a point where I figured God had given me a good life. It was nobody's fault but my own at this point. I couldn't blame anybody else. Couldn't blame the white man this time. It was all on me. And so at that point, I just decided, that if I was another chance, I would do right. I would fulfill my purpose in life. And during that time, it all came to me. And I'll tell you a quick story of how it comes to you and how God comes to you. I had I actually was in confinement in the hole, so to speak. Um, that's the term, of course, for it. And in there, I got that moment of clarity, and I knew that I was going to get my PhD. And so um, I came out of um, the hole, and I just told a group of fellas and a couple of officers that were standing there that I was going back to school and I was going to get my PhD. And of course, some of them laugh, oh yeah, right, that kind of thing. But then the officer said, I hear all kind of promises people make. You like, but I believe you, Dixon, because I had started working. Nothing happens overnight. You have to
Hmm.
start doing things, And even though I was in the hole because I was wrongly accused of something. But I understand looking back on it that, God put me there so this clarity and this point could come to me. And so from there, I I used that 5.5 years to get myself together, you know, to get me right personally so that I can go ahead and manifest my purpose in life. And as I began to continue to get myself together, the purpose in life came to me, and it just kept coming and kept coming, and it's to the point now where I do what I do now. I'm a public historian, like I said. I'm doing documentaries now that are showing the contributions of Black people and inspiring the young Black
Hmm.
people that these are things that have been done by our people before. There's nothing you can't do. You can do it. You just have to, it may be a harder road, but it can be done, you know. And if you, continue to work on those things, it'll come. Stop. Don't live day by day. Don't focus on what's right in front of you, but what can be accomplished
Hmm.
if you keep going. And so these documentaries and these films that I'm also doing are, I think, the manifestations of my whole career, from teaching all the way to this point, and turning the world into my classroom now, and getting, and just not 30 to 90 students at one time, or 110 students maximum at one time. Now we're talking about moving a whole group, thousands, to understand how we can take these lessons in life, these historical lessons, and apply them to the issues that we're doing and facing today.
That is that is a phenomenal story. Let me first, of course, Appreciate your transparency, your vulnerability, and sharing what you did. So important. The thing that stands out to me is when you refer to that moment of isolation, because in all honesty, that's what God does with us. He will allow certain storms to come down our way, not because he's trying to harm us, not because he's trying to destroy us, but sometimes he has to let that storm come down our way. And as a result of the storm, it creates a moment of isolation where it's just you and him. He lets that storm come your way because he's trying to get your attention. He's trying to get you focused. He's trying to say to you, "Hey, I got some stuff for you. I got some work for you. I got some plans for you." And in these plans, there's some blessings that are going to come out of this, not just for you, but it's going to equip you to be a blessing to other people. And so I need you to, in this case, instead of you locking in on, like you said, the fast money, that street life and all of that, I need you to lock in on me and let me just show you the greatness that you have within, that I've created you to be, so that you can again walk in that purpose, walk in the way that I have specifically designed for you to do. And so it's so refreshing to hear that even in spite of your storm that you had, because you could have very easily just said, you know what, it's over for me, I'm done, I got this bid that I'm dealing with, so the college, just throw that out the window. Trying to be something, let's just throw that out the window. But you didn't allow that to happen to you. You had your moment. You made a mistake, but you didn't allow the mistake to define you. You didn't allow that mistake to be the ending of your story. Instead, you've created new stories from it. Like you said, in documentaries and films, you've created new moments where you get the chance to speak to other people. I even just saw, even as recent as today, I saw one of your social media posts where you were trying to send a message to people about, particularly to young black men, that hey, don't allow yourself to throw your life away, and you look up, you're young, but you're locked up for the rest of your life, and all the greatness that you could have been is now wasted because you just threw it by the wayside. And just so I appreciate, again, your honesty and sharing as you shared. I'm sure that that's not an easy story to tell, but I'm so thankful that God used the storm, as he always does, that you allowed him to use your storm and bring forth a positive outcome out of it. Again, with all of the works that you're doing and the lives that you are impacting and the knowledge that you're imparting into other people. So that's phenomenal. And like I said, I'm sure if you could have wrote the script, if I could have wrote the script, we wouldn't have had you go down that path.
Oh
But
no,
we would have rather did it a different
no.
route. But it happened. But you're still standing.
Yes.
You're still standing upright. You're stronger, you're better, you're wiser than what you were before the storm even happened. And so sometimes God has to allow such storms, whether it's that or other type of things that come down our way. Again, it's about getting our attention, resetting our focus, getting us locked in on what's the priority and what's versus what's not the priority, so that we can walk in that purpose, so that we can be the best versions of ourselves, so that we can impact and change lives, which is exactly what you're doing. So again, I thank you for sharing that, because there's some listeners who need to hear this. They need to hear your story as you're telling it. And so I'm so appreciative of you sharing so openly, so candidly as you are, because we need to know that storms are going to come our way. It's going to happen. It's not a matter of if but when. But how do you respond in the midst of adversity? How do you respond in the middle of that storm? Do you throw in the towel? Do you give up, or are you trying to do it all on your own? Because you could have tried to do it all on your own, but you made that connection. You realized the understanding that I can't do this thing without God. I gotta have Him. This is not just to get through this, but to get through all of my moments of challenge, all my moments of adversity. So again, I thank you for sharing that. So, Dr. Dixon, obviously you just shared a very heavy moment in your life, and yeah, some of the storms are going to be heavy like that, and then sometimes our storms are just minor nuances, just lifing type of stuff. But what I'm curious to know from you at this point is if you would share, what is it that you personally like to do whenever you find yourself facing challenging times or moments of adversity? Like, what's your routine, your process? What is that thing that you like to do that works best for you, where you can kind of keep a level head, keep your focus right as you're working through whatever the challenge or whatever the moment of adversity is?
Well, we all have to do what is best for us and what works for us.
Mhm.
Um, we just have to make sure that it's not something that's going to be more detrimental, right?
Right.
It doesn't just provide relief, but it ends up being detrimental in the long run. And so for me, it's work. Um, when I get challenges in life, when I get frustrated, when I get, with personal things in life, because I've been through a divorce and things of that nature. Just personal adversity, like you said. For me, I go back to work, because it's something that I can bury myself into, and it's something tangible and positive that I see the outcomes from, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so for me, it's the work, I go back to work on that documentary. I go back to work on that next book. Um, I go back to double checking to see if we can write a follow up grant to the one that we just got. All the grant reports ready. Anything, where I can channel that anger and that frustration into something else that I know is going to be positive and give me a much better tangible outcome. And so for me, it's work. Some people need to step away. Some people need to this. Me, I just bury myself in work,
Mm.
and that works for me. And you have to find what positive thing works for you.
Love that. And why I love what you just said is because there's a lot of people who delve into their work, because for them it's an escape. But what I like about what you said though is instead of using work as sort of a crutch, if you will, I what I hear from you is that yeah, I pour into my work, but you pour into your work not just as a means to just distract yourself from whatever the challenge is. That work that you delve into is work that brings forth a positive outcome. It's work that brings forth fruit. And so you find in essence, if we want to if you take it to a spiritual level, what you're basically saying is that when I find myself frustrated, when I find myself overwhelmed, when I find myself, you know, buried in the midst of adversity and challenge, what brings me joy in the midst of that is to pour into using my gifts to do the works that are going to be a blessing to other people, that is going to impact, that's going to change. I instead of in other words, instead of making it about me and what I'm dealing with, I use the work because I know that that work is going to produce again positive things. It's going to be uplifting. It's going to be encouraging. It's going to be inspiring. No matter what it is that I'm doing as part of that work, like you said, whether I'm doing another grant, whether I'm crossing those T's and dotting those I's on that project, where I'm building more on that documentary or whatever it is that you're working. These are all fruits. These are all things that God has put you on the path for to do anyway. So for you to delve in to do to do a work that God is equipping you to be a blessing to other people, even in the midst of your storms, that speaks volumes to your level of your maturity versus you using, I just use work just as a distraction, because that to me, your word that you used earlier was tapping into something that, yeah, it might soothe you for a moment, but it could actually be detrimental. You're not using work where it becomes detrimental. You're using it where it becomes a positive thing. Because to use it in a negative fashion just to avoid the challenge, to avoid the moment of adversity, that's doing nothing more than putting a band-aid on the situation. Similar to like what people do when they decide that when I'm going through a stressful moment, that all I want to do is soothe the pain by drinking, or soothe the pain by smoking on something, or whatever. Yeah, it makes me forget about it for the moment, but does it help you get through it? You doing the work helps you get through it, because it helps to clear, it cleanses you, it helps to clear your mind, it allows you to focus. You're able, I'm sure, in those moments as you're doing the work, it allows you to kind of process whatever it is, that challenge that you're dealing with. And that's a healthy approach to doing it. So I appreciate the angle that you do it, and the way that you explained it, because it matters how you go about getting into the work to deal with adversity versus just, again, just using it as a crutch or just something to distract me from, to make the problem go away momentarily. That doesn't fix things, that doesn't get us to that next level. But the way you're doing it is again is a more healthy, more productive, more in line with the way God would have you to do it, because now you can hear from him as you're working through whatever that challenge is that you're working through. So thank you for sharing that. That's very, very key, and I'm glad you brought that up. So, Dr. Dixon, if you had the opportunity to speak to the younger Anthony Dixon, before Anthony Dixon became Dr. Dixon, before Anthony Dixon, you know, before when he was just a young country guy, who went to school and had all these dreams and aspirations for his life, and then he kind of got down a wrong path, and and they got you momentarily derailed. When you reflect back on all your experiences, good, bad, or otherwise, um, what would you say to that younger Anthony Dixon? What do you wish that he would have known that today, that you believe would have been helpful to him, that could have, been of encouragement to him, that could have gotten his mindset a little bit more focused, or just even taking into consideration that we're going to have listeners that are tuning into your broadcast, that they're going through some of what you talked about. Maybe they've made some bad choices, and it caused them to do some time. Maybe they're doing time right now. Maybe they're in the midst of some other type of struggle, and they don't feel like they feel like it's because of a bad decision or a bad mistake, that it's over for them, that they can't bounce back from that, that they don't see the value in themselves, they don't see their worth. What would be those words of encouragement, those words of inspiration that you would have for those individuals as well as the younger you? What would you say?
Well, the first thing in, I would press to the younger me and to the younger generations is the idea of living day by day is dangerous. Is dangerous to the soul, is dangerous to your very being. And that if you can set some goals and some accomplishments, I guarantee you, and I would have told my younger self that, I guarantee you that those goals and accomplishing those goals and those accomplishments that may take a couple of months or even some years, the feeling of getting those accomplishments is far better than any materialistic thing that you can buy right here, right now, just for today. And understand that nothing happens overnight. So gain those accomplishments, because the feeling you get from those far outweighs the quick materialistic things and anything that you get by living day by day.
Awesome, awesome. Because what I'm as I'm processing what you just said, what I'm hearing is, anything that's worthwhile, anything that's meaningful, anything that is valuable, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes hard work, it takes discipline, it takes focus. Something that you and I talked about at the very top of the broadcast, when you gave the experience of growing up in the country and doing what many would consider menial jobs, but for you, as you learned later in life, it was building up your work ethic, your focus, your
Yes,
mindset, your approach. Um, it allowed you to start thinking beyond, just making it to the next day. Because as you shared with many of our young people, particularly those who may grow up in environments that are economically challenged, in neighborhoods that maybe there's not a lot of hope, if you will, not a lot of good fortune around them to see positive examples of people doing well, people that look like them. It's very easy to fall into that mindset of just living, I just want to make it to tomorrow. I'm just concerned about tomorrow. You're saying, hey, no, make plans. Think beyond just tomorrow or the next day. Envision a future for yourself, and think big. Don't minimize it, because again, with all of the work that you do, that's that's the core of what you're highlighting, is that you got to understand where you come from, who you come from. You are of royalty. Let's just call it what it is. Not just by nature of your ethnicity do you come from a line of royalty, but then when you add the layer of being in relationship with God, that also adds a whole nother level of royalty that you experience. So when you blend those two together, then the thought of you not being able to accomplish, or you putting a limit on what you can accomplish, you need to get that up out of your head and begin to set yourself up to be successful, set yourself up to realize your dreams, set yourself up to walk in that purpose. And as you said, when you start seeing those things come to fruition, when you start seeing the fruits of your labors, the joy that it brings you. It's not about being conceited and arrogant or anything like that, but just the sense of accomplishment. And when it begins to add up and add up and add up, not so much in the form of accolades, but in you seeing how what you do impacts other people, how it
Yes.
changes lives. That's when you are on a whole. That's when you know when. That's when you actually know when you're truly walking in your purpose. When you get as equally excited, if not more excited, when you see how your work impacts others more than what you personally get out of it. So that's why I love when you
That's
spoke about,
that's really where
yeah.
we could, that's the whole, you know, that's the whole point or end game, even to this conversation that we're having tonight, right?
Hmm.
What are the things that we're doing now? I had these adversities, I had these troubles. I saw through them. God saw me through them. My family, who I'm so thankful for, that never gave up on me. You know, it's when people see the things that you are doing now and the impact that you're having now, that is sort of the coup de grace to your whole story, right?
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. So, like we talked about family, I can't help but to think back to it because having had a close relationship with my own mother, I can't help but to think about you saying, my mom had to have that come to Jesus conversation with me, but it was a powerful one. History is your thing. Embrace that. She didn't come to you and say, become a historian, so you can become a millionaire. She saw that you were passionate, that you enjoyed that subject, and so you trying to jump around and bounce around into all of these other areas that weren't really resonating with you because you were, again, the fast money mentality, just kind of doing what the world dictates that what we're supposed to do, that we're supposed to pursue a certain career or certain path in life, but not understanding what gets you excited when you get up in the morning. What makes you feel good when you delve into it? And for you, it was history. And I'm sure you had no idea that God would open up this world of history to you in at the levels that he did. But the fact that you allowed yourself to be open to receive what he had for you is what made that possible. Because had you been closed minded, had you been limited, had you not had an appreciation or understanding of what your true value was, then you would not be what you are today. So I'm thankful that God was able to penetrate in you and show you the big picture. Like you said, take me beyond just what tomorrow holds or the next day holds. Not that we're supposed to sit around and worry about what happens the next day. I mean, the Bible speaks about that. We're not supposed to worry about what's happening about the next day and the next day after that. But we're talking about vision. We're talking about purpose. We're talking about impact. And when you're speaking in those terms, then yeah, you have to think, how can what I do matter? How can it have a purpose, have a value, have substance to it, rather than it just being something that I'm just going through the routine of doing just to have a title, or something that I'm going through the routine of doing just to make a little cash here or there. Because there's many of us, myself included, that you go through life, and yeah, you may have a lot of accolades, a lot of successes in a particular career path or whatever, but at the end of the day, if you're not walking in your purpose, there's going to always be that void inside of you. There's going to be that emptiness that
Right.
you
I mean,
that
and
that
you understand that you do have to take things one day at a time,
hmm
but there's a difference between taking things one day at a time and living day by day. So you
right.
take one day at a time to get towards your goals and accomplishments, because you at some point you do see the light at the end of the tunnel.
hmm
But when you go day by day, you don't have any of those goals. You're just out there. And when you're out there in this society, anything really can happen.
That is so true. Like I said, if you're just out here just kind of wandering, just I'm just gonna figure it out as I go along. I don't have any kind of focus, any kind of direction. That makes you exposed. That makes you
Oh
vulnerable
yeah.
to the things that are not for you, to the things that's not going to be a positive impact on your life. You become susceptible to that,
Right.
and
You
before you
don't
know
choose
it,
your future, it will
hmm
choose you in this country.
there you go, right there. That's it right there. So.
The choice will
Um,
be made for you.
yes, yes, I totally agree. Totally agree. Well, Dr. Dixon, this has been a phenomenal conversation that I've had with you this evening. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. Your story is powerful. Love what you're doing, the work that you're doing, man, and definitely need it. So I appreciate all that you're doing, all that you are, the man of integrity, the man of character that you are, and it's just been a blessing having you aboard this evening. I know I've been blessed. I know my listeners have been blessed, man. So I thank you so much for taking the time out to impart in us. We could go on for hours talking because you just have a lot, so much to pour into us, so much to share. So I definitely appreciate how you have contributed this evening, and again, being of encouragement, being of inspiration to us all. But before I let you go, as is customary here on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, we do want to take an opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to acknowledge you, to lift you up. So please share with us if you got anything personally and or professionally that's going on now or coming up down the road. We want to know about it. We need to get the details on what you got coming up, and what you got in store, so we can be a part of that, to follow it, to support it, in whatever way that we see fit, and being able to connect accordingly. So please share with us, what can we look forward from Dr. Dixon moving forward, that we need to be aware of and tap into.
Oh yeah, definitely. First of all, I'm looking at going on a book tour, starting here in the southeast, moving into the Midwest, and then out west. That book um, will be some dealing with my first book, which is called Up From Incarceration, which is my story and my message to young people about dispelling the myths of the thug life, but more so on the purpose that I was put here on earth as well, which is um, telling these stories and why these stories are important. And so my book, Florida's Negro War, will be the main focus of my speaking engagements and the speaking tour and the book tour itself. Now, this is a fascinating story about the first Underground Railroad.
Hmm.
Most people think about the Underground Railroad that went north, but actually, the first Underground Railroad went south to, at that time, La Florida or Florida, when it was Spanish territory. And so, excuse me, the Spanish allowed any enslaved person to escape the English plantation system and come into La Florida for free. So these black people created the first Underground Railroad all on their own volition. It wasn't help from anyone, they did it themselves. And it manifested into three wars once they began to establish a relationship with the Seminole Native Americans or Seminole Indians. And in that second war, it was actually called a Negro War. And so that is what I have written the book on, that second war, Florida's Negro War, because when we look at it and we examine it, it is indeed the largest and most successful slave rebellion in United States history.
Hmm.
But also for today, right? Why we this story is so important is because it is a story of unity. These were indigenous blacks. These were blacks who intermingled with Native Americans. These were Gullah people from the coast, and these were current runaways who continued to thirst and search out and eke out an existence outside of enslavement. And they all came together and fought for their freedom, and they won. And so it's a story of what we can do if we just come together. That's the real message, in understanding the Black Seminole story, is that this is what Black people can do, which was at that time seemed to be an insurmountable odd, but they did it. And it's a story that isn't told, but it is a successful story
Hmm.
of how these people came together, unified, and won their freedom against the United States government and the U.S. military. And so we are creating a documentary first. It's called Freedom Seekers, Black Seminoles of the Past and Present. And so we're looking at the story of the Black Seminoles, but then we're also looking at the five major communities that they live in today, which is Florida, Andros Island, Bahamas, Oklahoma, Nacimiento, Mexico, and Texas. And so we're looking at those from a regional perspective and discussing the Black Seminoles and bringing that story of unity to life. And then we're doing a full feature length film to which Louis Gossett Jr. was a producer. And he's
Wow.
still listed as a producer, of course. And we are so thankful and grateful that he understood the importance of this story and supported us and became a producer on the film. And the name of the film is Ghost in the Grass. We're in the process of moving that along as well. And so this film is based on the book. Again, Florida's Negro War. If you give me just a second, I want to show them to you. Uh, Again, this was the first book, Up From Incarceration, that I talked about mine, but also more importantly for the work that needs to be done, or just as important, because talking to our youth is definitely important as well. This is Florida's Negro War. This is the public history work that we're doing right now, because this story of unity must be told. So I encourage you all, if you hear me or see that I'm in your area, by all means come out, listen, hear this story. Let's talk about the unity that is much needed in the Black community right now. Let's talk about um, this story and use it as motivation. Um, let's also discuss how we can move forward as a group of people and how we are going to progress into the future. And so you can go to two places. You can go to profaedixon.com and keep up with me personally, with the speaking engagements, and the book tour. And you can also go to blackseminoleproject.com to keep up with the two film projects. And we encourage you to go to blackseminoleproject.com, join this movement as we begin to continue to tell positive Black stories that have had an impact, to which people and things are being created to try to whitewash and disappear from the records.
Love that. Love that. I think the most telling thing about what you said, and we need to hear it as a race of people, is the importance of us just coming together and understanding the power that we have when we just unite, when we partner up, when we go all in together instead of competing against each other, instead of doing our own individual thing, just unifying. Is interesting because I was somebody that I'm actually friends with, Facebook friends with. Actually, she did a live earlier today, and she was talking about that very subject about being an entrepreneur and how it's so hard at times when you're out here trying to impact, trying to change lives, trying to be there for people, but yet people just don't, we in particular, we don't know how to always kind of come together and partner up, and try to collaborate and unite for a common cause, for a common benefit that's gonna be, again, that is gonna be a blessing for all.
So
So it's
again,
it's necessary.
it's very necessary, and that's why again I say, if you go to the website and I am speaking in your neck of the woods, so to speak, by all means, come, listen, let's talk, you know, listen to what I have to say, and then let's have a discussion about how we can move forward. Come to the book tours, listen, buy the books, read, understand the things that we're trying to accomplish and where we need to go, and hopefully, um, at some point between the speaking tours, the book tours, the documentaries, the films, we can start a full movement, because it's not just me, it's other people. But I encourage you to stay tuned with me as well, so that we can create this full movement in which we can move our community, the Black community as a whole, move forward into the future for a brighter future for our future generations. So
Love that. Love
again,
that.
profaedixon.com and blackseminoleproject.com.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So to my listening audience, he's told you how to stay in touch with him, how to follow him, how to be a supporter of him, how to get his books. Um, if you listen to this podcast this evening, you got to be feeling the same thing I'm feeling. I mean, this is powerful stuff, necessary stuff, and these are the kind of conversations that we need to be having more of. Again, I'm thankful for the time that I've had with this brother this evening, but these are conversations that need to be ongoing, whether we're having it directly with Dr. Dixon or we're having it, like he said, in our community centers, in our churches. Just really understanding and appreciating the importance of embracing one another, coming together for a common cause, tapping into our history, a rich heritage, connecting those dots and making sense of it all. It matters. It matters when you know your worth, when you know your value. It changes your whole dynamic as to how you approach life, how you approach, your various adversities and challenges. I mean, it matters because you understand who you really are versus you accepting what somebody tells you that you are. You buying into how it's, whether it's watered down versions or in some instances just false narratives of who you are. You get to truly see what you represent, what you come from, and what you can become. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Dixon, for sharing as you have. And for my listeners, if you've enjoyed our podcast this evening, if you love what we're doing here, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is all about. We want to inspire, we want to encourage, we want to uplift, being transparent, being vulnerable, sharing our stories as we did this evening. Not for the shock effect, not for the likes and all of that, but it's more about helping you embrace an understanding of how to deal with these challenges in life, how to overcome adversity, how to be encouraged even in the dark
Encourage.
moments,
That
even in
was
the darkest of moments, how to be encouraged.
encouraged.
It matters so much. But even, and of course, the biggest piece of it all is that you got to have God in the mix of it. He needs to be a part of every aspect of your journey, and not just somebody that you tap into when something is wrong, but somebody that you tap into when things are going well also. And if you don't currently have a relationship with God, I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure Dr. Dixon would co-sign on this, that today is a mighty fine day to make that decision. It'll be the best decision that you've ever made, because he can navigate you through all of this stuff. He's going to love on you like no other will. He's going to be that encouragement, that strength, that courage that you need, that support that you need. Don't minimize that. Don't take that lightly. So we're not telling you something that we heard. We're telling you something that we know firsthand. Don't leave him out of your life, because he does matter. He does care. He does love you unconditionally. Wants nothing but the best for you, and he can navigate you into that space where you're walking in your purpose, using the gifts that he has placed uniquely in you to be that impact, to be that change, to be that motivator, that inspiration, that source of encouragement out here in this dark world that we're in right now with a lot of chaos and confusion. You can navigate through that, and at the same time, again, be impactful, and leave a mark on this world that will go on for years and years. Not only while you're here, but even after you're gone, your impact can still be felt. in our young people and moving forward. So definitely keep that in mind. And remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight. Face that adversity, face those challenges head on, but don't feel like you got to do it by yourself. There is a God that wants a relationship with you. Embrace that, tap into it, follow his lead because he will not take you astray. He will not misdirect you. He loves you, wants nothing but the best for you. Hold on to that and just watch him do magnificent and wonderful things in your life, not only to be a blessing to you, but to equip you to be a blessing to others. So until next time, you take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you at our next broadcast. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you for having me again, brother.
Absolutely.